This is a very, very simple little rice pilaf. Pilaf being a kind of a braised rice dish. What I'm going to use here is monkfish. Any fish will do, a nice meaty fish if you can get it. Something like, something on the bone as well would be best. Maybe big steaks of hake, even salmon or something like that. But I like the monkfish with this kind of a dish. What I've done is I've kept it on the bone, but it's been skinned. The kind of membrane and all the trimming has been done. Your fishmonger will do that for you, no problem. And this is good for the smaller monk fillets as well, or monk tails as well. I'm going to use a red rice in this. It's a whole grain rice. But again, any rice will do, a basmati, a jasmine, or one of the top Spanish rices. I just like this red rice. It's got a lovely texture. It's and I like the kind of chewiness that you kind of get off it. I think it's a nice one to play around with. When you're cooking the rice, it's normal ratio: 1 part rice, 2 parts liquid. Also, another interesting thing I'm using here is a piece of fresh turmeric. Now you can use the normal dry turmeric, about a teaspoon. I've actually put measurements on the recipe for dry turmeric, but about a tablespoon of fresh turmeric if you can get it. Oriental Shop's a great place for this. And then I'm going to use an absolute bucket of chard on this. Again, with the chard, what I'd say is sometimes you'll get the big chard. I'm using a baby leafed chard, so I don't have to cut it up or anything. If you only can get the big leaves, just chop it up. If you can't get any chard, use spinach, something like that. It's pretty easy to get. And I'm just going to use that as the big bulk within the dish. And a nice little seafood kind of, with a nice kind of flavour and combination. A little bit of star anise in there, garlic, fennel. So it's going to be a nice, fresh kind of tasting rice dish, this. Which would lend itself, again, you could put mussels in here and kind of use this as a kind of a template, and you could easily build on it. Anyhow, cooking time. So to cook this pilaf, first thing off, a tablespoon of coconut oil into a pan that has a good non-stick pan if you have it, and a good lid as well. Into that I'm going to add my carrots. And my star anise, just to help develop a little bit of flavour here. I'll be using chives, so ordinarily you might see onions being used in this, but I'm using chives later on. So I think that'll bring that kind of nice oniony flavour in a nice fresh kind of way into this dish. So onto that, I'm just going to cover that up and let that simmer for a few minutes just to soften the carrots. So, having allowed my carrots with the star anise and the coconut oil, just sweat off there for a few minutes. I'm going to add my turmeric. Now I'm using fresh turmeric, so quite a lot of it, about a generous tablespoonful, and some garlic. But again, about a teaspoon of the dry turmeric would be fine. Just going to let those cook through. The colour that you get off this fresh turmeric, you'll get this in an Asian shop. Also into that, I'm going to add my dry thyme and my fennel seed, just to help those flavours develop up again. And I'm going to add a pinch of salt. Now, the salt I'm using is a low salt or a potassium salt. I think it's a good product, especially for blood pressure, inflammation and so on, as opposed to normal sodium salts, plus you're getting the benefit of potassium in the dish. And also a little bit of pepper. Just let those sweat and develop a little bit of flavour. The next thing I'm going to do is put in my red rice, which I pre-washed. Any rice will do for this dish, but I just like the texture of these kind of red rice. Again, a nice whole grain rice. Having allowed that all to sweat, I'm going to coat all the oil grains, a little bit of the oil and the flavour, and just letting that develop. By volume, I'm using 2 times by volume water. You could use a stock if you liked, if you had a nice fish stock, but 2/3 by volume water to 1 part rice. Just going to pop that in. And now I'm going to add to that my smoked paprika, my lemon zest, and dry tarragon. If you had fresh tarragon, brilliant, but put that in at the very end. Next up, I'm going to let that cook on a kind of a lower simmer. Just going to rehydrate the rice for about 7 minutes with the lid on. And just let that simmer away there for about 7 minutes. Just keep an eye on it that the rice doesn't start to stick. Now, having let that cook for about 5 or 6 minutes, the rice is still quite hard and quite undercooked. It's about halfway there, I'd say, thereabouts. And at this stage, I'm going to add in my monkfish. And the reason I want to keep this on the bone is because the bones provide quite a lot of flavour into this dish. And I want that kind of, that stock, if you like, that will naturally be created by the monkfish to infuse in with the rice. Now you find that your rice is a little bit going a bit dry, but still quite hard. Don't worry, just add a splash more water, and then as it's cooking, just add a little bit more water as it's going, and eventually the rice will get there. Just add little drops now and again if you think it's getting a little bit dry, and it'll eventually cook nicely. Now the other thing here is I'm going to put that down to the lowest simmer possible, because again you don't want to evaporate off the water, because that's measured to the rice, and just let that simmer away just until everything kind of comes together and the monkfish cooks through. That'll take about 10 minutes thereabouts. So having waited about 13-14 minutes actually for my rice. Red rice does take a little bit of cooking because again it's a whole grain and it's probably a little bit closer to the wild rice that you might find, but it will get there eventually. And it's better to have your pan a little bit extra juice in it like this, because now all of this chard I'm going to add in one go. I'm just going to let that cook down with the rice then. Yeah, there's that much chard in this. Just pop it like that. And that'll start to cook down into the rice as well. So you want that extra moisture and that extra water, or stock for that matter, in with that rice, just to allow all that chard to start cooking down into it. That'll probably take about another 5 minutes. So as this chard starts to cook down, just kind of mix it through and kind of let it kind of mix in and infuse as it starts to break down, and kind of loosen it up from the bottom. And eventually it'll start losing all of that bulk. Also a good idea to give the chard itself a little bit of seasoning as well. Now, after about 5 minutes, you'll see this chard really cooking down and starting to infuse in with the rice. So you have a lovely dish with the leaves and everything kind of looking really nice, fresh, infused. Very nutritious dish, but again, not a very calorie dense dish, which is just the kind of thing you're looking for. You can eat plenty of this one. Now into that, I'm just going to squeeze my juice of my lemon. I'm going to add my chives. And I'm going to give a nice generous drizzle of a good quality olive oil. Without the olive oil, it would just kind of richens up the whole dish. Then kind of a tongs I find is the best. Just kind of mix it all up there together. And then pop the lid on it and let it stand there, continue cooking for about another 3 minutes thereabouts. And after that 3 minutes, there we have it. Our nice little monkfish chard red rice. A lovely, very nutritionally dense meal, but again, lovely flavors and something that you can be generous with your portions on. and absolutely packed with antioxidants. And just to serve this one, I like to just put this kind of a dish into a nice bowl and literally dump the whole thing into it. And just let people help themselves. In the bowl, you can give another wee drizzle of a good olive oil. And there we have it.